One of the strongest oppositions to Jewish people believing Jesus is the way that so-called Christians have treated Jewish people throughout the ages. The sad truth is that many of the church fathers harbored ungodly feelings toward the Jewish religion and often towards the Jewish people. John Chrysostom, who was such a gifted orator that he was called the Golden Mouth in the 300s, and he was the first to accuse the Jewish people of deicide, which is the killing of God, blaming every Jewish person for the death of Jesus. He dehumanized Jews and he called the men savages and referred to Jewish women as prostitutes. The synagogue, according to the Golden Mouth, was a brothel. He said it was every Christian's duty to hate the Jewish people. When the Christian Crusaders came to liberate the Holy Land from Muslims, they murdered many of the Jews in Israel as well. Dr. Michael Brown writes in Our Hands Are Stained with Blood, quote, "It's even reported that when the Crusaders captured Jerusalem in 1099, the Jews fled to the Great Synagogue, which the Crusaders then set on fire." David Rausch adds, "They burned the Jews alive in the chief synagogue of Jerusalem, circling the screaming, flame-tortured humanity, singing, 'Christ, we adore thee,' with their crusader crosses held high." In the 1300s, Jews in Europe were accused of poisoning the wells, causing the Black Plague. Never mind the fact that the Black Plague came out of Mongolia, or that Jews were dying at the same rate as non-Jews. Brown writes, "Hundreds of thousands of Christians believed this lie. As a result, thousands of Jews were butchered by angry mobs." It's impossible to reconcile the loving words of Jesus with this type of behavior. It's important to recognize that during much of the Middle Ages, Christianity was a political force more than it was a religion. Calling yourself a Christian did not necessarily mean that you believed the words of Jesus or even knew them. It just may have meant that you lived in Germany, not Arabia. Nevertheless, it's important that you know that the New Testament never teaches that Christians should treat Jewish people in such a way. It says the opposite. Paul himself taught the Christians of Rome that if they treated the Jewish people poorly, they themselves would come under judgment. He also taught them that they should live in such a way that attracts Jewish people to the Messiah, always reminding them that this good news, this gospel, came from the Jewish people. As a Messianic Jew, I cannot base my faith on what other people claiming to know Jesus did in history. I go back to those first Jewish followers of Jesus. They didn't persecute the Jewish people despite being persecuted. They would not hate even though they were hated. The example of Jesus in the New Testament is of a Jewish man who healed the sick and raised the dead and forgave his enemies, even those who killed him. Why did he do this? It's written because of his great love and compassion. Any so-called believer who chooses to hate or commit violence in the name of Messiah has betrayed their faith. Let me encourage you to go back and read his words for yourself. Get a copy of the New Covenant. I'm pretty sure you're going to be really surprised at what's in it and what's not.